I'll quickly introduce Walking Tree Technologies for anyone joining us for the very first time. Walking Tree is a technology-focused company with our core focus on designing and building cross-platform web and mobile applications, perform system integrations, and enable digital transformation. We also specialize in data integration, data analytics, migration from legacy to modern systems, cloud migrations, and of course, perform UX design. Apart from end-to-end application development, we also provide custom solutions to enterprises for web and mobile, very specific services within the software development lifecycle, including UI, UX design, microservices, DevOps, and cloud. Also, our flexible staff augmentation services provide clients with on-demand skills and resources to help them meet their organizational and business objectives. Now, that was about us. On to our speakers of the day. Both have Fani and Arun. Both have been with us for a very long time. Both of them have also worked very extensively on ExtJS and Angular and other frameworks like Flutter, React, and Node. And this experience spans a variety of different domains and industries. So I hope you'll have come to this session with a lot of questions, because Fani and Arun are exactly the ones that you would want to ask these questions to, anything to do with the ExtJS Angular. And of course, please do leave these questions in the Q&A box. We will try to cover as many as time allows today. So that was it from me. Over to you, Fani. How you're doing?
Hi, Prancha. I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm good too. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing great and safe. Let's start the session. It was a great. Thanks for the introduction, Prancha. We'll take it forward. So, Prancha, you want me to share my screen or you will continue?
Yeah, it'll be great if you can share yours instead.
Great, then. Let me do that. Hope you guys are able to see my screen, everybody.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
So to start with, this is the agenda that we're going to discuss in today's session. As you guys know, this webinar is about migration from Sencha Ext JS to Angular. Right, topic is that the agenda. From the agenda, very first we'll try to understand the need for migrating from Sencha Ext JS, the applications, why we need to migrate web applications from Sencha Ext JS to Angular, or for that matter, any UI frameworks. But in this webinar, we'll specifically talk about Angular, and then we'll try to understand the steps in migration process. I mean, what are the different steps that we should follow while migrating web application from Sencha Ext JS to Angular. And then we'll also talk about the benefits of migrating from Sencha Ext JS to Angular, the extensive, the details of each and every point that we could think of, the benefits that any organization or a product would get when its web application is migrated from Sencha Ext JS to Angular. And then we'll also discuss about the best practices for successful migration. What are the best practices that we should follow while doing this migration exercises? And we'll also share our common challenges that we have faced while we are doing this exercise, because we have done a good number of migrations of this sort, especially from Sencha Ext JS to Angular. Good number of migrations we have done, so we have faced good number of challenges, and we found solutions for them. That's what we'll be sharing in this session at the end as a fifth item. And in this oral session, the need for migrating from Sencha Ext JS and steps in migration processes, what I will be covering, and rest of the topics my colleague Mr. Arun Kumar would be covering. Okay. So let's move on to understand the need for migrating from Sencha Ext JS application. So as we know, I expecting everybody who is joining this call understands, or at least has a little bit experience with Sencha Ext JS. When we talk about Sencha Ext JS, the 140 plus pre-built UI components, extensive data package, and theming, these are the high-level three things that we could think of why we should build an web application in Sencha Ext JS, right? Despite of having all this, there are some drawbacks which we need to consider, or which pushes anyone to move on web application or migrate on web application from Sencha Ext JS to Angular. So I could list out 6 points here. One is the high learning curve. As we all know, which we have gone through, the learning curve to understand ExtJS framework, the core library of ExtJS, understand the data package, understand the theming library, themes, and the test suits, and etc. is huge compared to any other UI framework, like especially if you take about Angular. The learning curve that needed in learning Angular and ExtJS is completely drastically different. Where ExtJS, Sencha ExtJS needs a high learning curve. And app loading time and performance is another factor that we should think about. Given the application size, the ExtJS core library size, and the layouting, the typical layout structure, that the layout component that ExtJS has, the application load time and the performance of rendering the pages, uh, at least the basic pages components would be high compared to Angular. Again, there are different points that we should consider, like basically where the data intensive applications, ExtJS performs not so bad, right, when compared to performing rendering any ordinary components in the screen. And a bundle size and another factor which we already discussed, like the bundle size of ExtJS is huge compared to Angular, where the ExtJS and JXJS core library itself is huge, where a very minimum application of basic application, if you want to build an ExtJS also, uh, uh, produce a bundle size of minimum 2 to 4 MB. Whereas in Angular, we can build on bare minimum application with the KBs of sizes. Mm. And the most important factor business will be looking at is the licensed platform. Sencha ExtJS is a licensed platform, and the cost is heavy. Especially from the last 4 or 5 years, the licensing cost of Sencha ExtJS has been increased drastically, where development, maintaining licenses for development and production is become a very costly exercise for any business. That is one of the major factor why a business, from the business perspective, why any business would think about migrating a Sencha ExtJS application to Angular. And another point is like development cycle for any custom function. Of course, we have 140 plus pre-built UI widgets or components in Angular, sorry, in ExtJS, Sencha ExtJS, but we know that at any point of time, any web application, all the components will not need fulfill the all the desired functionality of a web application. So if we have to develop a custom component to fulfill a business need, then the time it takes, of course, the learning curve to understand the core library of ExtJS and the different lifecycle hooks that we need to take care of, and using the appropriate core libraries, it takes a lot of time and effort to build that custom components. Where compared to Angular, it is like more of templating it. If we have our HTML thing ready, HTML elements and respective CSS ready, we are almost there to build a component in Angular. That's a difference. And another factor that any business would think about is like, let's say we are building an application or maintaining an application in Sencha ExtJS, then finding a skilled resource, someone who has a vast experience with ExtJS. And if at all the business finds, then the cost that a resource would incur to business is huge compared to managing a skilled resource in Angular. Because being a niche technology or enterprise technologies, and JXJS resources are very costly compared to another resources. And as the Sencha ExtJS is being usage of Sencha ExtJS is being uh, lowered down drastically. Even a lot of resources, there are no resources or the people developer community which is actively working on Sencha ExtJS. That's one of the major reason why we cannot find skilled resources on Sencha Ext JS. So these are all the needs that pushes any web application team to migrate their web application, which is existing or developed in Sencha Ext JS to Angular, despite of Sencha being more having a lot of capabilities. Right. Okay, now let's understand what are the steps that should be followed when we are planning to execute this kind of exercises. Basically, um, uh, first step is like analyzing the previous system, like as the normal process. Like when you want to migrate an existing application, first as a team, we should understand the existing system end to end, like the UI components, the business functionality, first the business functionality, and then the end users and the kind of design pattern that has been used, and the number of components that are used, like the pre-built or existing ExtJS components, how many custom components, right? So that it helps you to figure out or come up with a design for Angular. Basically, once you understand the existing system in terms of functionality, in terms of code, in terms of bugs that existing system has, in terms of components or the libraries, third-party libraries that the existing application has been using all this data, you will be able to come up with a better design or yeah Angular design for developing the same application in Angular. And we can also figure out the number of reusable components. Like basically, if you take about any web application, there'll be at least 5 to 10 components which will be used across the application multiple times in multiple screens. So in the analysis phase of this previous system, this is what the data that you need to figure out or try to find answers for all these questions, which will help you to design a new application in Angular. And then once you have all this data, now you know what are the heavily used components and the themes that we need to support and the kind of users and the target browsers, etc. Then it's the time to choose the best UI library framework to be used to develop the web pages. Web pages or the screens in the Angular. Like as we know, Angular doesn't have built-in components, though Angular material is fulfilling that to a lot extent. Recently, in the recent versions, Angular material has improved a lot. There are a lot of new components been introduced, and especially the CDK library, the CDK component development kit introduced by Angular material helps us to develop any kind of components on our own as well. The base library and base setup is already done available. The utility methods, the framework is available with the CDK, using which we should be able to build our components. But apart from Angular material, there are other frameworks or libraries available which provides almost the equal capabilities and equal set of components that Sencha Ext JS provides. Like for example, Kendo UI, or Prime NG, Clarity, Onsen UI, Sync Fusion, these kind of components. These kind of component libraries are providing almost the similar set of components, almost similar set of components with similar capabilities that Sencha Ext JS has. And it also depends on while you're choosing the library, it's also one of the decision factor would be like that you want to go with an enterprise versions, like the paid versions of them, or the open source libraries. Again, both of them have their own advantages, and the frameworks are the UI component libraries are available in both the terms as well. So that using all this knowledge, that the analysis that we have done in the previous stage, and analyzing all these frameworks and choosing the depending on the finance, you should choose wisely the which UI library has to be used to for developing your application, so that you don't regret. And because reworking, if at some point if you figure out after getting in the middle of the application, if you figure out that the chosen UI library is not meeting your need, then it will be an almost rework, redeveloping the whole thing. The effort spent so far will be useless. So this is a very important exercise that you should be doing. And third step is, now we understood the existing system, we identified the UI library. Now comes about the business logic. So when you're analyzing the business, in the first step, the previous systems, when you're analyzing the code, You would also identify the business units, business logic units available in the code, which you can figure out like how much of them can be reused, because even that will be written in a TypeScript or JavaScript, which can be migrated to Angular as a service, where all the business logic, most of the business logic can be reused apart from the UI manipulation code, which again in the analysis space is what you'll be identifying or helping you to figure out how much of this business logic can be reused, and if there is any additional features that you're going to add, you need to figure out put up a best possible design to add this new additional business logic as well. Then once you have done all this, then next comes the performance optimization. How you would make sure that the performance of your Angular application that you're going to build is well performing compared to Sencha Ext JS. Worst case, at least equal to Sencha Ext JS, but ideally it should perform even better than Sencha Ext JS, because the well-known facts that we already discussed. So once you have these things, then you need to figure out what are the best practices that you're going to follow, and what kind of components you're going to use to improve the performance of the application that you're going to build. It totally depends on the data bindings and amount of data that you're loading, and what kind of components, layouting mechanisms that you guys are using in developing the application. And then once you have taken care of all of this, the development, obviously development would happen, and the system testing should be performed. Like Sencha Ext JS has its own tools, like testing tools. Angular has inbuilt testing framework supported by Angular CLI, and Angular framework itself, using which you should be able to write our unit test cases and end-to-end scripts as well, where the wrappers provided in this Angular test libraries helps us to test the components and mock the data, and mock the components, and write our own test suits to build our build a complete test suits to complete the system testing. And then comes on to deployment. Deployment is nothing much different from Sencha Ext JS. Uh, Webpack allows you to, I mean, given the capabilities of Angular, we can modularize, lazy load, multiple features, micro front end, or Angular elements. All these are supported, which will help you to modularize the build itself, I mean, the bundle itself. And again, being just a TypeScript files or HTML, CSS file, TypeScript, HTML, CSS files, we should be able to deploy this in AWS S3 or any HTTP server and serve the application. Then after deployment, deploying into QA or production, finally, the maintenance is the major factor, which is one of the important factor also why we should consider Angular here, because the Angular has its own roadmap and release cycles, where every 6 months the new version, at least the minor version of Angular, will be released, fixing the bugs identified in the previous release, and as well as making sure that every latest version is up to date and all the security vulnerabilities have been will be taken care. Given the 6 months release, uh, we should be able to make sure that our production application, even though application is deployed in production, uh, the release cycle, our application is up to date with the current release cycle, so that our application is already up to date. And the upgrading from one version to the next version in Angular is very easy. Every release, Angular releases the upgrade guide as well, which will help us to easily update our application. There are very rare cases where uh, the new existing APIs are moved out, or there will be any breaking changes, unless uh, your actually built version is very old compared to the new one, compared to the latest version of Angular. That's all. I mean, that's the last step, where the migration, and we discuss about how we take care of migration, right? And then we should be discussing about benefits of migrating from Sencha Ext JS to Angular. These are the 10 different points that we could bring out. Uh, uh, I would invite Arun, my colleague Arun, would talk about these topics going forward. Arun? Arun, you're not audible if you're speaking.
Oh, sorry, guys. I'm in mute. Thanks, Fanny, for the overview on how migration happens on step-by-step process from ExtJS to Angular. So, hello, guys. My name is Arun. I'm going to continue with the presentation with the benefits of migration from ExtJS to Angular. So, moreover, I'm going to talk about what are the features we are having in Angular. So our development as well as um, uh, deployment process will be easy, and performance wise, how the app will be performing, and supporting multiple platforms, how it is supporting, and everything we will discuss as part of this. Okay, so when we are talking about the points regarding the Angular is providing, the main thing that we need to discuss is app security. It is about the client side as well as server side, that things we need to enable to make our app success. So that is one point, and let's discuss one by one point. So the first thing is uh, app security. So when it comes to the app security, these are the 10 main things that we need to take care from the server side as well as from the client side. Client means app side. We need to take care to make our app secured. One thing is vulnerabilities, because Angular uses libraries, third-party libraries, as well as secure libraries that we create from other developers can create. So we need to make sure that libraries are not prone to the attacks. Um, so we need to make sure that vulnerabilities are addressed. So actually, Google is basically provides support to the Angular, as you all guys know. Um, so Google has a program called Open Source Software Vulnerability Reward Program, where we can identify and report the vulnerabilities in the libraries that we identified, and Google is going to provide the fixes for those vulnerabilities into the coming releases. And another thing is keep current latest Angular versions with the latest releases. So our app needs to be updated every time there is a fix for the vulnerability, or there is an improvement in the Angular new versions, new features, new features that we can use in our app. So keeping up to date is one thing that we can um, make sure that our app is secured. Do not alter the copy of the Angular, because Angular is an open source. We can actually fork the content and make changes onto that and working on that as a core. We are not recommending that kind of development, because every time the fixes will come, new features will come. So if we folk can start working on those copy, we are going to miss those updates. So we should not do the separate copy of Angular and start working on those things. Angular have DOM sanitizer. Basically, it helps us to actually sanitize the content, whatever the template, whatever the elements that we created, DOM elements we create, it will sanitize and present to the UI. So it is actually kind of a security layer that will avoid the cross-site scripting and um, any forgery of cross-site requests and everything. So already Angular is providing one layer of security using the DOM sanitizer, and there is a facilities to actually allow some kind of the external scripts also by using the methods like bypassing the security HTMLs, bypassing the security trust using scripts like those functionality it has given. So if we want to allow some kind of other scripts also run into our Angular app, we can do using this DOM sanitizer. So it is actually going to trust that particular script only and run the things that we want. So another thing is AOT compiler. Actually, it is another layer where we finally check all our templates are actually are good. It doesn't have any cross-site scripting languages which will be used by the hackers. And AOT compiler is going to make sure the production build that we're going to give is not having any kind of these things apart from the DOM sanitizer trusted scripts. Okay, and there is another concept called trusted types, enforcing the trusted types. Like these are the backend server side, web server side configurations where we are going to ask a server to emit these headers as part of the headers cross-site context security policy. Um, um, and content security policies, where we will mention this trusted types like Angular unsafe bypassing, Angular unsafe JIT, basically that is used by the JIT compiler, and Angular bundler, where while bundling, what are the trusted scripts can be accessible and non-trusted scripts can be avoided, means removed from the our templates. So these are the things we take care about in the as part of the security. The next thing is accessibility. One second, sorry. Okay. The next part is accessibility, where we are actually, there are some cases like a visually paralyzed or some physically challenged people wants to use our apps, right? So basically, this accessibility option will talk about that one, as well as some additional features like giving the area support to tab indexes, scrolling options in the screen particular section. We want to have the scroll options and creating custom scroll bars to particular sections, so they can scroll only that particular sections, and tab options and list options, menu options, area menu to show that as a menu. Some people prefer list, area list, they show that as a list. Those are all options we are allowing in Angular. So if we are going with that type of development also, it is possible here in Angular. And how the accessibility tree will be managed and everything will be handled here with the accessibility options. So our next point is open source technology. This is the main point where we can use our production builds also with this open source technology, means Angular, which is reliable. Basically, even though open source, we have a very dedicated community which is working on the fixing the vulnerabilities or improving the Angular to the next level, modern app as a modern app. Modern framework actually, and flexibility, or giving the flexibility to support multiple platforms with the same code base. Like in ExtJS, we need not to have a separate code base for supporting multiple platforms, and we need not to code explicitly to rearrange the elements as per the platforms. Angular is going to take in care with some third-party libraries like Angular Material and other Angular libraries, supported third-party libraries. We are automatically taking care between the different platforms with the same code. Okay, and we have modularization concept, like dividing the functionality of the app into different modules, and this is the kind of reason why the app is going to load a basic app module at the starting stage of the app, and eventually load other modules as per the requirements using the dependency injection. And it is secured, as we discussed in earlier slide. We can provide security, all the security measures that web standards are actually requesting with the Angular app, using the server as well as the client side. Okay. And there is an extensive support both on the documentation side, like providing the documentation to all its facility, all its actually the available facilities that we have, and we have online and offline support also for the any vulnerabilities or any new implementation you have done. That is also you can give it to the Angular, and it will be published to all other users to use. Okay. The next thing is keep up to date. Like we have discussed earlier, we need to keep our app up to date to maintain that actually latest version to give additional features or solving the issues that we have faced earlier. This you can see the graph where from 18 to 19 we have one vulnerability which was identified, and 2020 that vulnerability is solved, and two more vulnerabilities in different libraries we have found, and 2021 you can see 0 vulnerabilities. Like it is indicating that we are improving on the security front, like all the vulnerabilities we are able to solve, and definitely hackers will find a different ways to attack our applications, but Google is very dedicated team to actually address those things. So the next point is performance. Any app we need to see about the performance. So we have AOT compiler ahead of time compiler. Basically, what this will do is whatever the code that we have written in the Angular using Angular core and TypeScript, which will be converted into JavaScript and compiled and bundled into a JavaScript bundle, and that can be easily rendered using any browser, any browser. Okay, and we even IE is going to support most of its content. We see more issues with the ExtJS and IE browsers, but with Angular we will not see those many issues. And another thing is change reduction strategies that we have. Like Angular is providing a facility to bind values to variables in the component. So only if the variable value changes, then only that part of the element will be updated. It is like only suppose if we have 10 fields in the screen, if one field value is getting updated, then only that element is going to be updated rather than loading the entire 10 fields, rearranging the form, okay, and relayouting the form. So this is a one concept, like change direction strategies, that is going to help in this regards. And we have two types of strategies, on push and default. If default is basically it will always check for that change, and on push is basically it will wait, and once the data comes and data value changed, and then explicitly we will trigger the change reduction, and then the Angular core will detect that change and apply on the UI. And IV renderer, another revolutionary concept, like it will always help on the development side, like it will monitor using the TypeScript, it will monitor for the changes to happen on the file, and it will compile only that part of the the file and give the results back to the UI. So it is for the development, we need not to recompile everything and relaunch the application to see the changes reflected on the UI. It will automatically recompile and trigger the change. So and it will also help on the bundle while giving the production bundle, and it will monitor the unused code and remove that from the final bundle, production bundle. We need not to explicitly remove some part of the code or some part of the library which are not used in the main app. Then IO render will automatically take care about those things, and because of these reasons the bundle size is very minimal, mostly in KBs. But if we have used very extensive development and a very big application, it will not cross more than 2 MB. And another thing is modularization, where we divide our application functionality into different modules, and on the basis of routing also we can launch respective modules. Suppose there is a login module and there is an transaction module. So while launching the application, we need login module, not like a transaction module. So while login, we will log in with something like xyz.com login. So according to that route URL, only login module will be launched into the system. So the page rendering time is very less, because it is a very simple component, simple module with the 2-3 components. It will be launched very fast, and once we log in, we need to go to the transaction module. So routing will again redirect to that transaction module, and because of that routing, the transaction module can be loaded into the system, and it will start rendering the page. So in this way, we are making sure that the app is very, even though it is a very light, how much fast it is rendering also, it is matter. So we can say with all these things, we can say it is very fast while rendering also. Sorry for that. Data centralization using RxJS. This is one more concept, like we are actually can use RxJS concepts to centralize the data and use between multiple components using that stores concept like we have in ExtJS. But it is very simple when it comes to the Angular. In ExtJS, the stores, models, controllers, those concepts are very difficult to understand as well as develop, and time consuming. It is not difficult, but time consuming. But here, when it comes to the Angular, using RxJS, it is very simple to create a store and maintain it in the state management. So the next step is the low footprint, where we are going to talk about the bundle size of the final product, the product that we are going to deploy in the production. As we discussed, as an Angular developer, we will use other third-party libraries to actually achieve some of the client requirements. So we need to make sure those third-party libraries are actually secured, safe, as well as the bundle size is not very big. Mostly we will not face these problems because all the libraries will be in just in not very little space. It will take very little space like KBs, but we need to make sure that those libraries are secured and the bundle size is very much in our range. Okay, another thing is gzip in the bundle. Actually, even though it is in KBs, we can again actually reduce the size by gzip in the main TS file that we have using the ExpressJS and everything. And another thing is analyzing Angular bundle. Always analyze your bundle size and the the libraries that we are including as part of our development. And we need to monitor the bundle size also for any third-party libraries that we include. So actually, as part of the low footprint, it is actually giving very minimal size to deploy in the servers, and because of that, the load time is very less. Means it can swiftly launch the app into the any browser or a mobile browser also. So when it comes to the Angular component-based structure, this is the structure that we have when we have the development environment. Base is index.html, and it will launch the app modules and everything, basic modules. We can have multiple modules with multiple, so many components inside each module, and services to support those functional blocks. And we use HTML, CSS, and component modules to do our development activities on the Angular. So when it comes to the component structure, this is basically the layout that we have. Is there will be a directive. Directive is basically a helper functions that can actually applied on elements to change the structure of the element or the behavior attributes, change the attributes of that element. So another thing is every component is consists of four main things. One is template, another one is a SAS, CSS or SAS that we are going to apply on that component. Another one is one TS file where we will write our component logic, what that component needs to do. And another thing is one spec file for the testing, unit testing purpose. So these are the four main things that we will have as part of the component. In the template, basically, we will write the HTML and CSS part where we will structure the elements into the component. We can use the third-party libraries like Angular Material or PrimeNG to include that libraries into the one of the module files, and directly we can use those components, the components that are provided by that Angular Material or PrimeNG into our Angular app. And there are services. Services is basically will call the external APIs and get the data that we require to show on the client side. So these are injectable services. If we inject the service into a module level or a component level, both levels we can add. If we inject that service into the module level, in that module, whatever the components are there, those components can directly use that component. If we inject that in the component level, that only that component instance will maintain that service instance. And the next important point is low learning curve. Templates and components, as we discussed earlier, are the main building blocks for the component-based structure, where templates where we will define the HTML and CSS, and components where we will write the logic, and the component-to-component interaction also we can define over there. Basically, a parent component will be there, and from the parent component, child components will be defined, like the tree structure it will be maintained in the component-based development. And with directives and pipes, directives, as we discussed, these are helper functions for the components. Directly we can use in the templates using the directive name, and pipes also will be like a data visualization purpose. If you want to change any visual data, not the actual data, then we can use the pipes. These are also we can use directly on the templates using the pipe name that we provide while creating the pipe. And data binding in HTTP, data binding, as we discussed earlier, we can bind the HTML element to a data value in the TS file. So if value changes, immediately that that change will be applied on the template, and visually we can see on the UI side. And HTTP client we can use to call the external APIs and get the data that we required from the server. And dependency injection at modular level and service level, we can use the dependency injection according to the routing concept. The modules can be injected into the app, launched using the dependency injection, as well as we can inject the service layer into the respective modules or components using the dependency injection. Routing is the one more important concept, like where according to the URL on the top, we can launch respective modules or components into the UI. So this is one of the useful feature where on clicking on a button, we need to launch a different module and show respective components on the UI. We can use these routing concepts, and it is very easy and very means as we are working on the UI stuff, any person who is working on the UI stuff, they can easily understand these routing concepts and everything. And the change direction strategies, like we discussed earlier, we have on default and on push. According to the change direction strategy we applied on that component, the behavior will be like detecting the change immediately after the change happens on the variable, or detecting the change after we explicitly saying detect the changes on that component. And Angular CLI command line interfaces, these are which are very useful for creating the components, directives, pipes, interfaces like that. All those things we can create with modules. All those things we can create with using the Angular CLI. We can directly create also by directly creating the respective files. But if you want to create all the files as well as links, we can use the Angular CLI to create. And the next thing is support. Basically, we are giving support. Angular is giving the support using the Angular tutorial, and the material design is the Angular material design, which are going to actually give it some of the components, very vastly used component like grids, list, drop downs, tabs, like those things. All the facilities we have, just we need to actually import those libraries into our Angular app, and just we can directly use that. We need not do write any logic to tabs and everything. Just in the template we can directly use those things, and it will also provide the methods to traverse between the tabs and everything, events and everything. We just can use those things. And inbuilt test support, where we have support E2E testing, automations and everything using the command Selenium. Karma, where we actually can write the unit test cases using the Jasmine, and put our IDs into the spec file that is going to be created as part of the component creation. Best practices for successful migration, where we can choose the libraries like Angular, Material, and PrimeNG to wisely use the components that while migrating. Suppose the ExtJS has a grid, so the same grid we can create from the Angular, Material, or PrimeNG grids. Those components are already present in those libraries. Just we need to import that library and use it directly. And even though they are giving the grid feature, it is a very lightweight, so the performance of app is very much good. And usability and responsiveness, as we discussed earlier, using the Angular Material, we need not to actually again code for supporting the responsive or supporting the multiple platforms. Just whatever the code we have written in the Angular, the same code is going to work in mobile browsers as well. And using the complete test suites we have, using the spec files, we can, suites will be automatically created, but we need to add ITs for the logic that we have added into that components. And the code coverage, using that ITs, we are going to make sure that 80% code coverage is there, and basically with 100% completion of functional blocks. Next option is the common challenges and solutions. Like while using third parties, we need to make sure that the bundle size is less, as well as it is not securely good. And we have theming and styling options in the Angular. Either we can directly style the components and put some external styles, or we can, using Angular material, we can create a theme for which is unique across the system, and implement the things in that way. So we prefer theming. So we need to make sure that rather than creating respective styles into the component, we create a theme and use that theme as part of the styling there. Using deprecated method, as we know that Angular, we will migrate from one version to another version. There are some deprecated methods there. Angular is going to deprecate and add new functionality, new methods to cover those functional blocks. So we need to make sure and tap on that release notes and see what are the deprecated methods we will not use in our development. There is nothing like it is going to remove the support, but better we not use those deprecated notations. Template forms and reactive forms. There is one more thing that people more keen on going with the template driven forms, and basically reactive forms give them more feasibility, more functionality, and more control over the elements on the UI. So if you need to use the forms, go with the reactive forms, and use the features like the form builders, and create the reactive forms with the elements to map to that respective controls. With this, I'm going to conclude the session. So any questions, please?
We do have a couple of questions. Arun, I think Funny has already answered them here, but I think everyone would like to hear on them once again. We have one from Kevin. Any common mistakes which you have observed migration teams usually committing? Anything we should specially watch out for?
Yeah, Pranjal, I've already, as I said, I've already answered, but I have tried to put 4 of them here. Basically, um, like the bugs of the existing system, which if we don't, basically what the team tends to is like understand the existing functionality, but in the analysis phase, they miss talking about or understanding about the existing bugs, which would become a features in the development that you're doing, or you try to replicate the same in the while you're developing the same in Angular, which becomes a you're recreating the bug in the system. That's one of the missing piece that that we have observed in the initial what do you say, the initial exercises that we have done, but later we could understand these are the mistakes, and we covered a lot of them in the next exercises, and then became more better. And considering all the components in existing application before, like as I said, to select choose the best UI component library, we have to understand like each and every component and how many of them can be grouped and all. And that's one of the missing factors that I can see. Like don't understand the system completely or don't go through each and every screen, or segregate them, group them into categories, and then try to find a UI, which later in the later stage it becomes a rework for us. And trying to implement another issue that we have observed was like EXTJS. Let's say take an example, a button in a grid, a button in EXTJS or a grid in EXTJS need not to be same look and feel or the same behavior when you're developing an Angular, right? It all we need is a similar functionality, not similar, same functionality, but not the same look and feel or the behavior. That also in sometimes which is not needed and you're trying to achieve it, which consumes a lot of effort, and we may fail in delivering that. And another which we already talked about, choosing the UI library without spending time in understanding the existing system, which will also cause a lot of issues. One example that I try to give is like, let's say most of us miss this theming concept because EXTJS is a very good theming. You don't consider that as one of the requirement, and if you choose a library which doesn't have flexibility of developing multiple themes, right, then you end up rewriting the theme part at the end when you want multiple themes and etc. And there are a good number of things that we can consider also.
Thank you. And we have one more question that's from Daryl. Would migration to Flutter from ExtJS or any other framework be more or less a rewrite?
Yeah, almost a rewrite, especially to Flutter, it's completely rewrite. No, there's no option to talk about like any reusable. But if we talk about any other framework like Angular, React, and all, like at least the business logic to some extent, as again, assuming that in Sencha Ext JS, the business logic has been completely separated out. The logic is not tightly coupled or binded with the data stores or the UI component things, then the some part of it can be reused in while you're developing an Angular and this Angular or React or any other framework. If your existing EXTJS application business is tightly coupled with the CS component, then all you can do is it helps to refer. I mean, yeah, you should be rewriting it, but you should not be thinking about how it should be developed or how it should be doing. I mean, you can look at a code and rewrite it. That rewrite would be more easy instead of when compared to developing altogether new, right?
All right. Thank you, Funny.
Yeah,
And
Arun added one more point to the Kevin's question. Like, yes, that's also one point that I yes, models that we create in EXTJS can be reused as an interfaces or data models in Angular, so that you can map the data from whatever the Ajax calls the data that we are receiving from the server using the HTTP.
right. Thank you for that, Funny. And thank you once again, Arun. Thank you all for joining us today. That's all that we have for you. In case of any questions that you may still have, please do use the feedback form that will appear once when you log out of this session. And I hope to see you all again in the future. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining.